Great. Okay, so now let us continue with chapter 5. Okay, chapter 5 basically will be discussing on the framework and the hypothesis development. Okay, as you go along doing research later on, you will see that you will come to different terms with regards to framework. Okay, there are what we call conceptual framework, there are what we call theoretical framework, there's also research framework, and at the same time, there are also what we call an academic framework. So remember, the framework actually is a mapping or the which put everything into the picture of what you want to do, especially with regards to the variables involved in your study. Okay, and if you able to derive a framework, so therefore it is just another step to actually develop the hypothesis. So I'll try to show you or to share with you on how to go about doing the framework and at the same time work on the hypothesis development. Okay, so hopefully after this you'll be able to differentiate between the concept and variables, okay, and then to develop the research question based on the research framework. If you can recall that I already asked you to actually replicate a study. So basically, whenever you replicate a study, okay, it's already the framework is already there. So it's just a matter of you taking the framework and put it as it is yours. Okay, and then from the framework, actually, okay, based on the way that you draw the framework, you can actually develop the hypothesis. Okay, what is a research framework? What is a conceptual framework? What is a theoretical framework? So put it simple, okay, just ignore the content first. Okay, so merely every research, okay, in order to conduct a research or to carry out a research, you need a framework. As I mentioned, a framework is like a mapping of what you want to do, what are the variables involved, okay, at the end of the day, what are the research questions that you want to answer. So in research, okay, the most talk about framework, okay, there are two. The first one we call it a theoretical framework, and the other one we call it a conceptual framework. But if you're talking about applied research, which is different from the basic research, so there is another framework that we call an academic framework, okay, or academic construct. Okay, putting to terms, this is very simple. Just put it like this. If you're talking about a framework where the variables are derived from a theory, for example, if you were talking about Maslow hierarchy of needs. So Maslow hierarchy of needs, there are five needs that need to be fulfilled in order to achieve life satisfaction. Okay, so if you derive that needs from Maslow's, so automatically the framework that you develop using the Maslow hierarchy of needs is known to be a theoretical framework. Okay, but if you decide to add another needs which is not part of Maslow, okay, you might find it somewhere through your reading, and then you put it together with Maslow, and it has not been tested before, so that is when the framework is known as a conceptual framework. Okay, so later on we'll recap everything back. So which one is concept? Which one is theoretical? So theoretical are basically those framework which are derived from theory. Okay, derived from the books, derived from the journals, derived from the articles, or whatever that have already been published and made known. The conceptual framework is something that is try and error for the sake to explore. Okay, it's not yet been proven, but there's a possibility that it might actually influence the outcome of the research. So this is the theoretical, which come from the publication or whatever material that you obtain, and the other one is the conceptual, which has not yet been proven, but believed to have impact on the whole outcome of the research. Okay, so going on that note, okay, so the framework offers a model of how to make a logical sense, meaning that if you have the IV and the DV, so you know what influence what, okay, and it dictates or it shows the relationship between the variables that you are testing. All right. So the framework is actually discuss the interrelationship among the concept or the variables that are deemed to be integral to the dynamics of the situation being investigated. So that is why I told you in class, okay, please don't embark on something that is complicated or difficult. Okay, because at the end of the day, okay, when we conduct research, we want to make sure that every research question that we posted, okay, is being answered, okay, atau will be answered by the whatever analysis that we conduct. Okay, so this is the conceptual framework as I mentioned to you before. Okay, if that particular variables or those particular variables have not been tested together, meaning that it's a new variable that you put in, so automatically your framework will be known as a conceptual framework because it is not yet been proven. Okay, so when the preliminary investigation reveals concepts that are difficult to operationalize, the researcher will concentrate on defining this issue. So maknanya benda itu belum lagi disahkan. Jadi you try to actually validate that variable. So that will be the conceptual framework. If you okay, a simple example will be like this. Okay, if you're talking about a motor show, pertunjukan pameran kereta. So normally there are cars that have already been produced or just waiting to be delivered or being launched to the customer, and there are also cars which are just still in its concept mode, meaning that yes, the car is there, but it is not yet materialized. It's not open to market. It's not open to order. So that is how research works as well. Okay, once that is being proven, known as theoretical, and the other one is not yet being proven, that is a conceptual. Okay, the concept of variables. Of course, in research, there are different variables. Okay, made known to you is the independent variable and the dependent variable. So remember, whenever you face your page, okay, on your left hand side, this is always the independent variable, and on your right hand side is always the dependent variable. So these are the factors and these are the outcome. Okay, so please don't misinterpret this. Remember, IV is on your left hand side and the DV is your right hand side. Okay, what is a variable? A variable is anything that can take on a differing or varying values, meaning that something that is not fixed, something that fluctuates, something that changes. Okay, for example, if you're asking people about their satisfaction, okay, so that depends on the perceived value from that particular respondent. Okay, and the value can differ at various times. For example, if I were to ask you, how do you find this subject? You might say it's difficult. But later on, once you pass the subject, you will say, oh, there's nothing. It's just a simple subject. So it differs by time. So that is why you need to really understand later on, okay, the research design and what is needed in order to actually design a proper research process. Okay, of course, as I mentioned to you, the dependent variable, also known or called a criterion variable. And this is actually, there's also another term when there are people who call it an outcome variable. So remember, chapter 1, the background of study should discuss this. Should discuss dependent variable, should discuss what is the outcome, why do you want to study that outcome. Remember, Chapter 1, in the background of study, you must discuss the importance of looking at the dependent variable because it is the criterion variable and it is the outcome that you expect from your research. All right. The second variables are the independent variables, are also known as the predictor variables. Okay, so basically, if you have just one independent variable against the dependent variable, so that is a standard relationship. But if you are talking about more than one independent variables having influence or affect one particular dependent variables, those are considered to be multivariate, meaning that it is multiple regression or multiple analysis, okay, of variables. So independent variables are also called as factors variable, meaning that factors that can influence the outcome, factors that can contribute to the outcome. Okay, so You can have more of the independent variables. Okay, it doesn't impede on the whole analysis, but be careful. Okay, too many will actually give you more headache. So that is why I don't want you to really embark on a difficult part of it. Okay, the other variables are known as they can be grouped or clustered into one particular name into what we call an intervening variable. So intervening variables, there are two, the one that we call a moderating variables and the other one that is called a mediating variables. Okay, what is the moderating variables? Moderating variables is variables that just influence on the existing relationship. Okay, it influence okay from a distance. Maknanya dia tidak berada di dalam laluan ataupun hubungan sedia ada. Dia hanya mempengaruhi hubungan tersebut dari jauh. Okay. The other one we call it a mediating variable. Mediating variable berbeza dengan moderating. Moderating just now, okay, if we are talking about the moderating, it influence okay from a distance. But for mediating variable, it is in between the path. Dia terletak di tengah-tengah hubungan sedia ada. Alright. So later on, I'll show you the difference. Okay. So going to the concept again, the theoretical framework, as I mentioned to you before, okay, whatever that you obtain, okay, from the publication, journals, articles, or whatever, that has been proven and has been published and made available to the public. So those are the theoretical, okay, theoretical in nature. Okay, the concept is like this. Please be careful and be aware of this. A theory sometimes is not in its word by itself. Contoh, for example, if you're talking Maslow hierarchy of needs, even though there is no word state that it was a theory, but due to the fact that it has been tested, so it is considered as a theory. And in management, for example, we have a theory of what? Theory of leadership. Okay, so there's a word theory which denotes that it is a theory. You also have social exchange theory. Okay, you have the self-efficacy theory, you have the field theory, you have the cultural theory. Okay, that's a word theory. So whenever you use any of the dimension within this theory, so it will actually be known as a theoretical framework. Okay, so developing the theoretical framework is logically developed, describe and elaborate network of association among the variables that are deemed to be relevant to the problem situation and have been identified. That's the key word, have been identified through such processes as interview, observation, and a literature survey. Okay, so that is the keyword, right? Okay, so as for now, just understand what do you mean by theoretical and what do you mean by the conceptual. Okay. So these are the 5 basic features there in order to actually establish whether it is a theoretical or conceptual framework. Okay, so if these 5 is fulfilled, so that is more like a theoretical framework rather than a conceptual framework. The first one, the variables considered relevant to the study should be clearly identified and labeled in the discussion. And then the discussion should state how 2 more variables are related to one another, meaning that it's been proven before. Okay, and then if the nature and direction of the relationship can be theorized, meaning that you know whether it influences negatively or positively. Okay, so that is a theoretical. Okay, and then there should be a clear explanation of why we would expect this relationship, meaning that you can project, you can forecast the outcome of that relationship. So it is more of a theoretical rather than conceptual. And then you'll be able to illustrate it in the schematic diagram, meaning that there's a path, you know what influence what, okay, the direction and everything. So that strengthens the facts that the framework that you have is more of a theoretical framework. Okay, so this is what I mentioned just now, the mediating fact, the mediator, okay, not the moderator, the mediator. So the mediator sits in between of the relationship. For example, this is green supply chain management practices, okay, relationship with manufacturing firm performance. So green partnership is in the middle of that existing relationship. So that is a mediator. All right. Okay, Alhamdulillah. So as for now, I think I just stop here first to check on you. Okay, so you can just now open your mic. Okay, for discussion if you have any question.